Welcome back to Tanach Tea. So today we have we have Debbie, and we have a new guest this week. But before we let our guest introduce himself, I want to thank our sponsor for this week's episode, Dovi and Malki Friedman, who sponsored it. Thank you so much, Dovi and Malki. They sponsored it, Lezecher Nishmas Menachem Ben Chaim, who spread Torah to so many. So thank you so much, Dovi and Malki. Dovi was my chavrusa when I was in high school. He was a base medrash guy when I was in the... he helped me pass high school. So I wouldn't be here if not for Dovi Sishkech. And he's still supporting the Torah, so appreciate you. Also, I want to give a shout out to Bonei Olam. Me personally, I am collecting money for Bonei Olam. They're an amazing organization. If you've not heard of them, what they do is they help people get treatment in order to have children if they're not able to have children. And I think in the last year, they had 70 couples have babies. So they're an amazing organization. On January, I think 9th, I don't remember the exact date, don't quote me, but they're having an amazing knockout volleyball event in Miami. So if you're listening from South Florida and you want to go to this event, if you donate in the link in the show notes, it's $180, and there's volleyball, music, food, et cetera, et cetera. And if you just want to donate to help this amazing organization from wherever you are, any amount would be appreciated. So I'm going to put my personal link for the Bonei Olam fundraiser in the show notes, and that'd be amazing if you can support. So today we have Elan. Elan, you want to say your last name? You want to go public?
My name is Elan Teichman.
So now you know who he is. So we'll let Elan tell us about himself after the intro music. But before we get to the intro music, we have a minhag on Tanach Tea, where you drink the iced tea and you try and guess what flavor it is. So that'll be your first introduction to the people.
Oh boy, here we go, a lot of pressure. Peach?
That is absolutely correct.
Let's go.
You're able to stay past intro music. So
Sim and bracha. Here we go. Here we go.
So quick recap of what we did last time. So last time we were involved in day 6. We spoke about all sorts of topics: demons, the body versus soul, the 10 things that were created at the end of creation, the gematria of positive mitzvot versus negative mitzvot, the amazing creation of mankind, Asher Yatzer, etc., etc. We're going to be continuing with our day 6 topic. So we're going to finish off day 6 today. We are in Pasuk Chaf Ches. But before we do that, we need to meet Elan, and we're going to do Tanach Barbershop Talk. So that'll be right after this. All right, so Elan, here we go. You want to tell the people who you are, just brief. It's not an interview style podcast, no pressure, just so the people know who they're getting Torah from for the next 45 minutes to an hour.
So like I said, my name is Elan Teichman, originally from Muncie, New York. And then I was living in Miami Beach in Tower 41 for about 5 or 6 years. And about half a year ago, I moved to Yerushalayim, to Rehavia. And now I came back for a few weeks to see my friends in Miami, see my family in Muncie. And now I'm just on this unbelievable podcast that you guys started. Everyone knows how much I love Josh. And, when Josh told me, that you were starting this a while back, I'm like, of course, that's awesome. And now I'm just excited to be here.
So actually, I think I told Elan about the podcast like maybe 4 years ago. I haven't done it for a while.
Yeah,
so
I remember.
Elan was one of the first people I told about doing a podcast on his porch in Tower 41.
Yeah.
So now it's a real thing. Here we are at Tanach Tea.
It's amazing.
So thank you so much for joining. Now, Elan won't hype himself up, but Elan knows a lot of Torah. Should I tell him about the binder? Elan has this amazing binder full of Torah. I don't even know how to explain it, that he put together. That's just like one of the most unbelievable things I've ever seen. You want to expand on the binder or let secrets?
Just very briefly, I had a lot of Baruch Hashem, diverse influences in my life. Some Arabeim are like, you'd call them very yeshivish or Hasidish, and some are much more, let's say, they could be modern Orthodox or worldly, whatever you want to define that, but the different ends of the spectrum. And I felt growing up like Rabbi Jonathan Sachs was someone for me that was huge. Or Moshe Feinstein, my Rebbe's grandfather, was huge. And Rabbi Sachs said something that he wrote the type of books that he would want to read and learn. So when I was growing up, I was interested in all these different things. I love Torah. I love Tanach. I love Gemara, Halacha, everything. But I also love history, philosophy, politics, economics, finance, sports, pop culture, everything. So I'm like, I want to learn this type where it puts it all together. So I was just, writing all this stuff for 10, 15 years, researching all this stuff. And I guess when you came to my apartment, that was 3-4 years ago. So that was an old iteration. Baruch Hashem, it grew a lot.
It's been updated.
Yeah, updated. Different, the iOS updates. But sometimes you update it by learning more and reading more. Sometimes you update it by just going through different life experiences. So Baruch Hashem, that's the story of the binder.
Amazing. So today on TBS, that's Tanach Barbershop Talk, we're going to be talking about the top 7 couples in Tanakh. But there are 2 rules before we start talking about it. The first rule was that no avot or imahot. So Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and then of course Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah were out because that would just be obvious and our list would be limited to 3. And the second rule was that you could have double entries. So theoretically, if Yaakov was allowed, you would be able to do Yaakov, Leah, and Yaakov and Rachel, which applies for some potential people in Tanakh. So those are our 2 caveats. Everyone made a list, or everyone has a list of 7? So should I go first, and then we'll build off of that?
Yeah, wait it.
Okay, so I'll go first. I mean, I could tell you my 7, and I could also tell you my just missed, and we'll see if we line up. So the first couple that I have is David and Abigail. If you're listening to the other Tanach Tea, the bonus episodes of Tanach Tea, this will just be this will be the same information, but it's obvious. David, I don't need to explain. He's one of the Ushpizin. So, that's an easy one. I don't even have to go there. Why Abigail? So many reasons. Elan was actually the person who told me you were the first person to tell me that Abigail is the only woman in Tanakh who's described as beautiful and smart. And I ended up naming my daughter Abigail after that.
Let's go.
So Elan was actually the one who told me that. And she's one of the 7 Neviot. She's also on the list of 4 most beautiful women. And she was described as smart first. And if you listen to the live Tanach Tea, the David and Abigail, you'll see just how wise and smart of a woman she is. And she actually saved David's life. If not for her actions, David never becomes king. So you're talking about a legitimate power couple here. And the Gemara actually says that, a king is not allowed to have more than 18 wives. And then there's 2 opinions. One opinion says, unless it's Abigail, and you're allowed to go over 18. And the other opinion says, even if all 18 are Abigail, meaning to make the point that it's absolutely not allowed. But either way, it paints Abigail as really like the ultimate wife of a king. And I feel like that was enough. Maybe I have a feeling Elan has to be an Abigail on his list too. So I'll leave a little
That's my whole list.
Yeah. I'll leave a little bit of meat on the bone for that. My next one, Miriam and Kalev. I know Debbie had that for sure.
You took one of mine.
Miriam and Kalev, I think, has to be on this list. Nice. Power couple. You're getting both sides. One of the things when you're making this list, it's like you don't want it to be heavily weighted. You need the man and the woman to not just be, of course, the wife of whoever is going to be important, but Miriam is obviously huge, right? Like she's not the wife of Kalev. As a matter of fact, in this scenario, Kalev is actually the husband of Miriam, and Kalev was like higher than Yehoshua and one of the spies, and he got Hebron, and we can go on and on about Kalev. And if we actually listen to the story of David and Abigail, Abigail's ex-husband before David was Naval, who was a descendant of Kalev, and he thought he should be king over David just because he was a descendant of Kalev. So that's how much the influence of Kalev. Now, again, he's a bad descendant of Kalev. I don't want to put that on Kalev, but he's an absolute giant of a tzaddik, one of the 10 spies, the only 2 who was good, and then he was a spy again from Yehoshua with Pinchas. So Miriam and Kalev is an easy one. My next one is Yehuda and Tamar. So it seems Debbie has that one also. That's what I'm teaching to my 9th grade class right now. Yehuda were all called Jews after Yehuda. That's an easy sell. Kingship comes from him. And Tamar is not just the wife of Yehuda. She allowed herself, she was willing to be burned alive in order to not embarrass Yehuda. And we learn from her that it's better to be burned alive than to embarrass someone. Embarrassing someone is like killing them. And she had all the cards. She had his signet, she had his ring, she had his cloak, she had his staff. The staff represented Moshiach. The ring represented David HaMelech. The cloak represented the Sanhedrin that's going to come from Yehuda. And she put it in his hands and said, identify, please. And that merited her to be the mother of Moshiach. And there's actually a medrash that says that when she wanted to send the items to Yehuda, the angel Samael, the angel of Esav, who had a vested interest in this because he didn't want David HaMelech to defeat Edom, he hid the items. That way she would be killed and she would have no proof. And she davened to Hashem that if you let me find the items right now, I'll have 3 descendants who will be thrown into the fire for you instead of me being thrown in right now. And I believe that was Daniel and Hananiah, and I don't remember the other one. But regardless, I think Tamar, for all those reasons, really stands out. My next one is going to be a little bit of I'm willing to bet maybe no one has this on their list. We'll see. Mordecai and Esther. According to the Talmud Bavli, they were husband and wife.
What?
And if they are husband and wife, then to me that's an easy. Like Esther's one of the right. I mean Mordecai. It's literally Purim, right? So that's an easy inclusion. My next one is Boaz and Ruth.
That's a good one.
That to me is a clear power couple.
I love
Boaz, who was a judge.
That's a great one.
Right, Boaz, who was a judge and obviously stands on his own as the great grandfather of David. And then Ruth is the epitome of a convert, of a righteous woman, and and the mother of ancestry, etc., etc. We have Megillas Rus, so that's a clear power couple. My next one is Yocheved and Amram. Amram was one of the 4 people who never sinned, and by the way, David and Abigail raised one of the other 4, Kilev, so that's another feather in their cap. But Amram's one of the 4 people who never sinned. Yocheved is the daughter of Levi. She literally saved all the babies that were being born in Mitzrayim. I mean, she's not just the wife of Amram. She stands on her own. And then the fact that they raised Miriam, Aaron, and Moshe with no misses, 3 for 3. I mean, and that's as good of a 3 for 3 for children you could ever get. That stands on its own. Okay, wow. And that's 6. I won't do 7 right now. I have 4 options for 7. I'll open the floor and take your opinions. So Debbie, we'll start with you.
So I have a very, very similar list.
Not shocked.
Yeah, Caleb and Miriam were my number 1 that I thought of. A couple that you didn't mention, I put Elkanah and Hannah.
Nice.
Which is a nice both of them I think stand on their own. Another one was Yoshua and Rahav.
I have that on my list. Okay, nice. You want to build that case for Rachav? Yoshua, you don't need to. You got to build the Rachav case.
I think Rahav is an amazing woman, right? She's also one of the most beautiful women also.
She's on the list of 4.
One of the 4, yeah.
And I mean, what she did who was that went in?
Pinchas and Kalev.
Go into, and she saves them.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. And she waits 40 years for them to come. I think she's an amazing woman.
And she's a convert as well. She converted on the spot. And also, Yirmiyahu comes from her. I think Yeshayahu, Kohen Gadol's, right? And prophets come from the union of Yeshua and Rachav. They only had daughters, but they married into Yehuda. I think kings come from them. So Rachav, because of her conversion, merited to have prophets, kings, Kohen Gadol. So I think that really says a lot about her. So I didn't name a 7th. That was on my maybe list. So you have your opinion there. Okay, what else?
One that might be controversial, but I'm inspired by this week's Parsha, is Yosef and Aznat. And the reason why is, I don't think we have to explain Yosef at all, obviously.
That's on my list, spoiler. That's on my list also.
Yeah? Mm-hmm. Because of the backstory of Aznat. Have you read the Midrashim? It's incredible. So to summarize, because it's a little bit long, but to summarize, ends up being that according to the Midrash, Aznat is the niece of Yosef. She ends up saving Yosef. She's the one who tells Potiphar that it's her mother, Potiphar's wife, that is accusing Yosef of the attempted rape. She saves his life because
he would have killed him.
They would have killed him, and they threw him in jail instead. And then she apparently is the adopted daughter of the Potiphars, and the real parents are Shechem and Dinah that assault. And the fact that Aznat ends up having Menashe and Ephraim, right? When we know that Dinah was the 7th child that Leah was going to have, and she prays for it to be a girl, not a boy, so that Rachel can have 2 of the tribes instead of only 1. She's apparently changed in utero from male to female. And so in theory, Leah loses a tribe, but really when Ephraim and Menashe get the status of tribe, she actually gains 2, not loses 1. So I don't know. That whole backstory.
She gave up the tribe of Yosef and took Dinah. They switched the genders.
Exactly.
And now she gets Ephraim and Menashe back as the mother of them.
I just want to add to that.
We'll talk more about that in Tanach Tea in 4 years. When we
Exactly.
I just want to add to that and say that it's funny because they say that that's actually one of the reasons why Dinah was taken, was because they say that Yosef had like feminine personality traits and Dinah had masculine personality traits, and Dinah was like a tomboy, so she was out with the boys, going out, shepherding, fooling around.
Because she was originally
a boy,
male,
right?
And that's why Yosef is into his looks and his hair.
Yes,
he's more feminine.
Exactly,
because he was originally female.
Yeah.
So amazing point. Elan, do you have any you want to shout? I don't know if we finished Debbie's list, but we'll do.
Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, well, let's go to Or's first.
Okay, Or, take it
now
away.
I want to see what
So my number 1 is also Kalev and Miriam. I think that you just have to
absolute power couple on each side.
number 1 picks, just number 1 picks on each side.
Honored at every dinner every year.
Yeah, I mean, the line that comes from him is just, incredible. The fact that he was also mentioned in with the Yoshua.
Yeah, and he was 3rd on the list of spies, and Yeshua was 5th.
Right.
So he was like, he was
6 above. Also, his younger brother was half brother, I believe, was a judge, and he was one of the biggest judges at the time, actually. And then obviously Boaz, and this is in no particular order from this point on, but Boaz and Ruth, obviously. Boaz, I think, was, as we've said, Ibzan.
Yeah.
Some people think. I mean, enough said about that. There was literally an entire book written on her, on Ruth, to just talk about the legitimacy of David. And Ruth obviously understood the assignment. That, the whole time she's just making every correct decision. Yosef and Osnat I really liked because the reason why Dinah was really raped, they also say, was so that Yosef could have a Jewish wife in Egypt, because the exile in Egypt needed to happen. And Yosef couldn't have been with an Egyptian woman. It had to be so-called kept in the family. Also, David and Abigail, I mean, really good one. I like the fact that I think that story teaches you humility, and respect from both sides. How both parties should treat each other. Also, I really do like the fact that not only is she, this was already said, but not only is she one of the 4 most beautiful women, but she's both intelligent and beautiful, and you don't just say that about anyone.
And we learn also, if you listen to the live Tanach Tea, we learn about our nefesh. Like, her prophecy is like really, really deep stuff. Like, her Perek Chaf Hey, which is all about her, is like no joke. Like, it's not just about David, it's like about us, which is the concept of the prophets being recorded, that there were 3 million prophets, only some of them are actually recorded for us. So like Abigail has like a legitimate place in the Jewish, religion. Yeah, go on.
And then another one, well, I just lost my, another one was, I'm surprised no one has said this, but
let's see if it's on my maybe list.
Dvorah and Barak.
I didn't put them on because they say, I didn't feel that Barak carried the squad there.
But the idea was, I mean, if you kind of look into it though, he
had
the capability.
I thought about it.
And he also had a big sense of humility there, where, he's like, I don't know if I don't want to take her spotlight. Maybe there's certain opinion that it wasn't so simple as, I didn't have full emunah. I mean, that's a couple opinions, but
we'll get to that in 6 years.
6 years, right? I think where Josh's son is going to be on the podcast at that point. But it wasn't so simple as, he just didn't have enough emunah. I mean, he was a little bit scared, but so was Yaakov when he was, about to approach Esav. So I don't say fear doesn't always indicate a lack of emunah per se.
Is there anyone else you have on your list that we didn't mention yet?
That we didn't mention?
Yeah.
That we didn't mention, no. I do want to add, the last one I want to add, I didn't quite have 7, but Yoshua and Rachav I like, but from a different perspective. I think that they both teach that Yoshua wasn't so-called a first-round draft pick.
Right.
But he brought himself to the All-Star team. I mean, more than that, really. And Rachav also
became king.
Right.
Yeah.
They and Rachav, they both came from the depths of zero. Rachav was arguably negative. That just shows you how far emunah and how far perseverance and work gets you. So, and then look at their descendants.
Yeah. Elan, you have any?
No, none of mine weren't mentioned.
So take it away.
No, I didn't do 7, but I was thinking we were talking today about like top. What was exact
top 7 couples? So do you spiezen of couples?
Yeah, like, and I was thinking like
couples.
Yeah, I was thinking like what makes a shidduch, like what makes a couple like a good couple, like why get married, like for what, like just vibe as a solo, go independent, I was thinking like I'm always interested in couples and like there's a synergy, right? Like my father's a corporate lawyer. He spends his days buying billion-dollar companies, right? And you have to think like when you buy a company, like why are you doing a merger? Like for what part? Just stay as a solo company.
I mean, you're not looking at them as individuals. You want to see.
Yeah, thinking why are they even a couple? Like, okay, this is a great guy, this is a great girl. But like, why are they building a house? Why are they building a family? So I like that. I'm always interested in like the combo, like that double helix, like right. I was thinking obviously OG like David Melch's, my friends would call him Zadie David, like Zadie David, yeah. I'm like he was such a special human being. And like, Michal was a special girl, special woman.
On my maybe list.
Shaul's daughter, she was clearly a special person.
And she saved his life also.
She did.
We have a lot of scenarios where a lot of the women on our list saved their husband's life.
Yeah, that's what a wife is, in many layers is supposed to be. But I was thinking, Abigail was really the one that Chazal elaborate about, that this was really David's real zivug. Like this is the one that his neshama, there was something deeply metaphysically resonant with David and Abigail. And the other one that we'll explain why in a second. The other one that really hit me was actually Boaz and Tamar, and Boaz and Rus. I didn't even think about some other ones. I was like, wow, that's brilliant. You guys thought about that. I didn't even think about them. Boaz and Rus, and then I was thinking the reason why those two couples. That's it. My list ended there, and I was thinking because I love how you see that like the Nitziv talks a lot about. We talked about this today about. Yeah. Why were David and Abigail such a special couple? Because David, with all his kochos, it's a famous phrase that the godless of David HaMelech was that he was Esav done right.
Yes.
It was the correct iteration of when you have a guy who has so much fire and koach in him. Yitzchak Avinu saw that in Esav. He felt that Esav would like work on himself and control himself.
He saw the potential of David HaMelech. He's not an idiot. Yitzchak saw David HaMelech in Esav.
He saw. Want to hear a wild story? Yeah, so my other Rabbi Tamler told me that his grandfather's a Moshe Feinstein in the Gadol Dor, and every year the Torah Masorah has this like big convention, and I think it was Torah Masorah, and he says in 1977, and this Parshas told us, it's with Yaakov and Esav, and all the Rosh Yeshiva, all the speakers, whatever, they got up to give these speeches about like Yitzchak Avinu, he didn't know who Esav was, and like you have to know who your children are, and whatever, and Esav and he had it was the Shalosh Shudas slot. And that was like the prime spot. That was like prime billing, right? And Ramosha had a whole prepared drasha, and he put down he put away his notes, and he gave a whole thing, and he said, "I'm here to stand up for the covenant of Yitzchak Avinu." And he gave a whole long thing saying, of course Yitzchak knew who Esav was. He knew what his strengths, his weaknesses. He just saw a future for him that could end up in a David HaMelech. That's not Yitzchak's fault. People have free will. You could choose to be good and bad. So David HaMelech, I love all of his koch and his just like he had high highs, he had low lows. And I love that Abigail was the I love that she was the water to his fire. I love that. Like, like Game of Thrones, like a song of ice and fire. Like, I love that. Like, he was hot-headed, but people loved David because he was a vibe. No one davened like David HaMelech. He literally wrote to Hillel. Like, being around David, he was just geschmack. He was a fantastic mood. He was just happy, hopeful. He was like starting businesses, companies, taking over countries. Like, he was fantastic. And then, but sometimes he would get carried away. And
he was about to.
Novel messes him over, and David's like, boys, we reckon them. Like he was about to just demolish them.
Including Abigail.
Everywhere. Go to town.
Yeah.
And Abigail, like, she knew how to talk him off. And like, how they say there's a lion whisperer? There's a certain people, they know how to speak to people, and they can just like, let's lower the vibes a little bit.
She's the lion whisperer.
He was the lion, Shev Yehuda. He was the melech. She knew how to whisper in his ear. I love that dynamic. And then the other point in his life, he got carried away. It was without her. It doesn't really matter, but it was with a certain sense of his other chataim where he's so much fire, like, but that was one. And then the couple of Boaz and Rus, which his Bubby and Zadie, which if you do the math, my uncle wrote a graphic novel about, shout out to Yoni Glatt, about David HaMelech. It's called The Shepherd King. Or actually, he renamed it The Anointed. But he has this thing where basically Rus was very old, and like she saw in David when he was younger, she saw what type of great grandson she had. Like this kid's a legend. Like
I didn't know she met him.
There's certain midrash, whatever. Even the vibe of like Rus was David's great grandmother, and I love that Boaz is this older, wealthy man, and I love the fact about that shidduch because Rus did not go after Boaz.
Right.
Nami said, like, pushed her a little bit. Rus was just vibing. She was doing the right thing. She was trying to be nice to Nami. Her mother-in-law, she was nebuch. She was poor. She had nobody. And I like that idea from, like, doing the right thing attracts good energy. And to me, like, Rus and Boaz are, like, they're such good, nice people. And it has, like, little baby boy. And, like, you don't know that your great-grandson's going to be king. It's like those two couples are, like, why get married in general? I think it's because Chazal, like, you get married to build something. And, like, what these couples built, it hit me as, like, what a beautiful, like, synergies each of them. And that was it. That was my list, too.
That was beautiful. You really did both couples absolute justice. That was awesome. Debbie, do you have any others, or okay? So let's try to build 7 right now.
I do want to add. I can't believe we didn't mention this, but David and Avigail also had a son who never sinned.
I think Kilo. That's what you said before.
Oh, yeah.
I mentioned it real quick on the fly, but yeah, that just shows their. I think that tells more on Avigail as a mother. Probably back.
You get the vibe that Kilo was Avigail's vibe.
Yeah,
you get that sense of like a person like
he didn't want the fire. The rest of David's children were.
They got the fire.
And he's like, I'm just gonna learn Torah. You guys do you. I'll just sit on the side. I'll sit this side.
He was kind of like Yaakov and Yitzchak, had that type of personality.
Right. He's like a Binyamin, Amram, right? Those are the other people who never.
It's like those sons of the Gedolim that like no one ever heard of. All they do is learn but quietly in the base measure Yerushalayim.
Right.
Like no one knows who they are.
Yeah.
Like their father's like advising like about how do we like conquer like nations to like prime minister, and the son's like, yeah, I'm just happy to learn.
And by the way, out of all the wives of David, you could make a real case that she. I mean, obviously Bathsheba.
Yeah.
Also, she raised Shlomo, but a lot of the other children went completely off. So there was a real.
They talk about it.
There's a real. It's hard to raise a child in that environment. But with that being said, I think we have to justify leaving Bathsheba off the list because David has 18 wives and he has the 3 famous ones, and we mentioned Michal as a maybe. The reason why I didn't put Bathsheba on my list is because so. You could put a lot of women on the list as just based off of the fact who their husbands were and who their children and their grandchildren were. Now, that I'm not taking away, that is a big deal. Like, that is a huge deal. For example, I had Aaron and Elisheva on my maybe list. So Aaron, I don't have to explain. Elisheva was the sister of Nachshon, who, of course, is the great-great-great-great-grandfather of David, and he's the one who went into the Yam Suf. And her son was Elazar, who was the second Kohen Gadol, and her grandson was Pinchas. So even though we don't know a lot about her on her own, that says a lot about her. It just when it came to doing this list, I feel like we have to go more to women who we know more about. But that's why she was obviously probably absolutely incredible. That says to who she was based off all these people around her. Another example would be Moshe and Tzipporah. Like, we don't know so much about Tzipporah, but we know that she saved, again, Moshe's life by the bris milah situation. And we know that she was a baller, the daughter of Yisro or whatever, but it's kind of hard to put her on the list. Just, you're doing, of course, with the weight of Moshe, but she was probably amazing, but we don't know so much about her, so she was also on my maybe list.
It's crazy how little we know of these people.
Yeah.
We know like I had a teacher, a professor once, and he said something that really hit me like a lightning bolt. He goes, we don't know anything about Moshe. Okay, Devrei Yamim talks about what Moshe Rabbeinu was doing. He was like conquering in Africa. He was a prince. Yeah, but we don't know any until he's 8. We don't know anything. Yeah,
we don't know how to life.
We don't know any. We don't know. Moshe
you meet him as a baby, and then he connects with Egyptian man. He comes 8 years old.
He said this thing. He goes. We only know 3 stories. One, and it's all about how you see his like superhero like morality. He went to go stop the 2 Jews fighting in Egypt. He stopped the one getting beaten up by Mitzri, and then he went to go stop the 2 Jews fighting, and then he saved Tzipporah and her sisters from the shepherds. Hard stop. Like, we don't know anything about it. This is Moshe Rabbeinu. Like, we don't know anything about about all these people. We don't know about their wives. We don't know what they did in their spare time. We don't know like what their lives look like. We know so little. So I was thinking about like, there's probably a million great women, but we just don't know like anything. It's wild.
So let's try to build our 7. So David and Abigail, we all agree that's slam dunk. Okay. Miriam and Kalev, that's the epitome of like
power.
Clear, yeah. By the way, Abigail saved David's life. Miriam saved her brother's life. You know, he's not born. So far we see all the women are really doing work. Yehud and Tamar, we all agree. I think to me that was like.
I mean, they weren't really
Tamar's mother, Moshiach. Well, ultimately they are. You know, and Tamar, just like what she did was incredible. And also you can make a case she saved Yehuda's life just spiritually. He's going nowhere, you know, if not for her. Mordechai and Esther, if they're husband and wife, we all agree. That's okay. Boaz and Ruth, everyone had.
I love that one.
The other one I had was Yocheved and Amram. How do you feel about that one?
That's actually the one that I was going to talk. They say that Yocheved lived to see the Yam Suf.
I didn't say that. I didn't.
No, I've heard that she survived. I mean, I don't know how long
she was already 130 when she gave birth to Moshe.
Right.
Yeah. So.
And they say that I've seen this on
another 80 years on top of that.
I mean, that she was still kind of like Sarai Menu, like she was very young and youthful because of and it wasn't just, you know, Moshe that she saved. I mean, she saved Moshe like directly, but she took care of a lot of Jewish babies at the time, and she was really like she did a lot for the babies at the time.
So you agree with having her on the list?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Also, over there we know enough about them individually, and the proof is in the children. Okay, so we agree with Yocheved and Amram. That's already that's 6, and that's, you know, with Mordechai and Esther kind of maybe. So then who's 7? There's Moshe Tzipporah, but I think we said we don't really know enough about Tzipporah. There's David and Michal, who Michal also again saved, but okay, Michal is described as amazing. We have Aaron and Elisheva. That case was just all the people around Elisheva. We don't really know so much about her. We had Yeshua and Rachav, which it sounds like everybody was leaning towards that one to making the list because
it's very underrated.
We know something. We know about Rachav. Like
I just think it's so cool to see how Chazal were so open to not just Abbalas Tshuva. I mean, she was doing the worst thing a woman could possibly be, and not just she was killed. She was like the chief of what do they call it? The saloons in the Wild West.
Madam.
Yeah, the chief madam in Las Vegas, and they're like, and then she like somehow meets like the Gadol door, and he's like, "You're special. I think we should get married." Like, how's we even open to something like that? It's the most wild thing.
Yeah. The stories of converts in Tanakh, when you see them rise from, I mean, think about who Ruth was also. She's a Moabite princess. She comes from the Moab, from my father, from Lot and the right, which let's talk about David HaMelech's really insane ancestry. Ruth, who comes from incest on one side, and then Yehuda and Tamar, which was like, you know, dicey story on the other side. That's who David comes from. That's a whole other conversation that we'll get to one day. But so it sounds like we're leaning Yeshua and Racha for the 7th spot. Is that what we're settling on?
It's hard not to.
So, if we take out Mordechai and Esther, if they're not married, who would be the next one added?
Not counting Yeshua?
No, counting Yeshua. I have David and Abigail, Miriam and Kalev, Yehuda and Tamar, Boaz and Ruth, Yocheved and Amram, and then Yeshua and Rachav, and then Mordechai and Esther. If we take out Mordechai and Esther, if they're niece and uncle, then who are we throwing in? We can just leave them. That could be our 7. The Ushpizin of couples. There we go. All right.
And this is with leaving out the Avos and Yemos.
Leaving out
right.
Yeah, because those are slam dunk.
And we left out also Adam and Chava. We couldn't include that.
I have a problem with putting Adam and Chava because they got us all killed. We're all dead because of that.
But they're the model Ezer Kenegda. We learn everything, right?
But that's a clear flaw on the record. all the other women on our list are credited with saving life. She got her husband killed. Everyone else saved their husband's life, and she got her husband killed, and everyone else.
But she's still called. We still call her Chaya, like Im Kol Chaya.
Yeah, I'm not trying to disrespect.
No disrespect to Safta Chaya.
Yeah, if you're listening to this podcast,
thank you for everything you've done.
No disrespect. Okay, so that was Tanach Barbershop Talk. Comment on Spotify. Email us at Tanach Tea. Text me. Don't call me. And let me know if you agree, disagree, who would make your list. Those are the shpizin of couples, not including the avos and imot. Now let's get into our new material. So pasuk Chav Ches in Beraishis. We're middle of day 6. Vayevorech otam Elokim, God blessed them, meaning the humans that he created. V'yomer lehem, and he said to them, Elokim, Pru Urvu, be fruitful and multiply, u'melu et haaretz, and fill the earth. V'kivishuha uridu b'gdata yam v'ofa shamayim v'chol chaya harameshes al haaretz. And you conquer it, dominate the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, and everything that creeps and crawls on the earth. So I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to be skipping a lot of pages today in the Mamla's. He's going to go out. I'll going to be skipping. You're going to hear my pages flipping, but I'll tell you what he's saying and why I'm skipping it. Just to stay true to the Mamla's. I don't want to disrespect Rav Yaakov Kuli. I'll say why I've made decisions to skip a lot of what he's saying. But the first thing that he says on this pasuk, he says Pru Urvu, right? He says, we spoke about, this was such a perfect episode to do couples. It makes sense now. He speaks about marriage. Right away he goes in and he starts saying that the Torah is now the first commandment is Pru Urvu. You have to get married, you have to be fruitful and multiply. It's the foundation of Judaism, right? And he has a whole section of marriage and children. Goes in on a lot of different aspects. He goes in on Hilchas Nida, like pages and pages of Hilchas Nida. It's obviously not. He says in his intro, don't skip any halachos. In his intro to the Mamlez, he says if you're gonna reproduce it, by all means. So he co-signed the podcast, but he said don't skip halacha. Like that's one of the reasons why I'm writing it. But I feel that we can skip Hilchas Nida. That's obviously a private matter that people should do in their own time. So we're gonna be skipping that. But a little bit on the marriage stuff that he says. He says that a man should get married by the age of 18. Which you could argue maybe is outdated today, whatever, but he has a proof from the Torah. And his proof is, when it's talking about a Kohen Gadol and it says that he should take a wife, the word vahu and he is, the gematria is 18. So that lets you know that you're supposed to be married at 18. Okay, whatever. We won't get into that, but he teaches that the commandment to marry and have children is more important than building the Beis HaMikdash. Meaning when you have children, you are building your own Beis HaMikdash. And he says it's so important that if you need money to get married, you should sell a Sefer Torah. So that's just a little bit of what he talks about. A little bit more that I thought was really powerful. He says that when a man gets married, and obviously also a woman, all of his sins are shut away, right? And we know that from Machalot, from Esav, and it was a couple parshas ago, that when a person gets married, all their sins are gone. But this part I found really, really interesting. He says that when a man is single and he doesn't have time, this is from a male perspective, this line. He says when a man is single and he doesn't have time to learn because he has to work and he has to take care of himself and this and that and blah, blah, blah. Okay, fine, he has a case. But once he gets married and he has a helper, he has an Ezer Kenegdo, now if he doesn't learn, now he doesn't get the credit for all the years he didn't learn before that. Meaning it's the woman who enables him to learn. So if he spends his time after he gets married studying Torah, then it shows that the reason he didn't before was not because he didn't care, it was because he was preoccupied with all the things that he didn't have help with. So once he gets married, if he shapes up, and that's honestly a woman's job is to help shape her husband. I think we could all agree that women are way better than men, and it's natural on the man who needs to shape up more. So I mean, speaking from my own experience, my wife is way better than I am, and she's the one who helps me. I don't help her. She'd be fine on her own. So regarding such a marriage, it says in Mishlei, he who finds a wife finds good. And it actually says they're talking about Michal in that scenario, and Avigail. I saw that they're referencing that because they saved David's life. But meaning because you have a wife, now you have help, now you could study Torah. If you don't, then it shows that you never really were into it the whole time. So that's how you get rid of your sins. Also, another part that I found very interesting over here was that he says that if a non-Jew converts to Judaism, his obligation is fulfilled, even if his children don't convert. Some people say your children have to convert, but he says some people say that even if your children don't convert, you still fulfilled your obligation of Pru Urvu, which I think is a big chiddush. That even it's enough to have non-Jewish children in the world, which is, I don't know, you might not have thought so. Granted, there is the other opinion, but
I guess you go, like, whenever I see this pasuk, like there's a famous from another Navi. There's a pasuk like lo latobra lashavas yitzar. Like it means like Hashem created the world not for it to be empty and barren. You see her and like Hashem's telling Adam, he's like, okay, like I want you to produce, like have kids, build, have families, build the world. And I guess it makes me think like, why does Hashem care? Like take a step back, like who cares? From Hashem's perspective, like you have now we know there's trillions of galaxies. I was just listening yesterday to like, Interstellar, the movie, and like
great movie.
It's a sick movie, and like you get the sense of how
I don't, but
it's like one of the best Chris Nolan's big space
that's
movie.
Christopher Nolan.
It's amazing, and they're talking about like there's like a billion trillion whatever, not just galaxies, like technically habitable planets are like Earth. And you're like, if Earth disappears, like this tiny little dot, like how would the universe be affected? And you get thinking, no, Hashem, for whatever reason, he really does care in every person. He wants every person to get married and to have children. And there's some significance. It's not like, oh, who cares? It matters, You have to think, Pru Urvu is like, it matters. It matters that people could build their lives and have kids.
You could also make a case that maybe Hashem is just telling you for your own sake. The Mamla says over here that if a person fathers good children or mothers good children, then even if they're no good, that'll get them their credit in Olam Haba.
Right.
So it's almost like a person should have children just to maximize their opportunities in Olam Haba. The more children you have, the more chances you have of like, if you have a Moshe Feinstein, you're the father of Moshe Feinstein, you're going to get that credit.
It's a lot of points of Gryffindors.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right? You're investing in a stock when it's worth nothing when the baby's born. So the more children you have, there's actually really there's something to having a lot of children just running your numbers up. Again, try to get all the money.
Odds are you'll have one kid that makes in cash advance or nursing homes or
yeah, exactly.
I'll take the
whole one
thing.
Kid who makes it, now your Olam Haba is set. So maybe he's just telling us, for our purposes, like here's a cheat code: have children, then you're not just reliant on your success.
But it seems even deeper. Like I know. It's about this specific pasuk because if you go a little later in the Torah and you get to Migdal Bavel, and you're like, it's not clear in the pasukim what their sin was. I know that there's midrashim that they wanted to build a tower they wanted to build like a rebellion against God, but they don't say that. But so the Rashi's grandson, who's writing in Ashkenaz like 900 years ago, says no. He says they wanted to they were building like a secular humanism, like a UN back in the day. Like Hashem said, Pru Urvu, Hashem said, be fruitful, multiply, and expand all over earth. Go to South, go to Venezuela, go to Canada, go to Ukraine, go to Africa, Asia, and go and spread out, be different, right? And they're like, no, we're staying in one place. We're gonna build a tower. We're not moving anywhere. We're gonna be all the same. And Hashem's like, no. He wants like Meluas Haaretz. It means like ufarat, like spread out, develop. Like he doesn't want everyone being the same and staying a little ghetto. He wants people like developing and venturing out.
Another idea here, moving on from we could obviously talk about children and Pru Urvu forever, but the Mamloez spins Pru Urvu. He brings another commandment out of Pru Urvu, one you might not have thought of. Yeah. It's amazing. Yeah. He says, just as Pru Urvu obligates us to have children, it also obligates us to be fruitful and multiply in our study of Torah. And he says, one must give birth to a new idea in Torah every day, which unbelievable. He says, you need to have Pru Urvu for Torah.
Wow.
You have to have a new idea of Torah every day.
It's commanding you to be creative.
It's commanding you to be creative in your Torah.
That's why.
And he says that means you have to review, and meaning it's not that you have to come up with a Chiddush every day, but if you learn the same Torah that 101st time, you'll get something new. So it's not like this pressure that you need to come up with a new Chiddush every day, but you should come up with a new Chiddush every day. And he says you should learn something, ideally not just review, you should learn something new every single day that you did not know previously. And you should do it with enthusiasm and try to find new insights. And he says the following. He says, if a person can't study by himself, right? Not everybody can study by themselves to come up with a Chiddush. He says you must at least go where you can hear Torah lessons, keep your ears open, and try to hear a new insight each week. So for those of you at home listening to Tanach Tea, you're welcome. You're good to go. He says each week, by the way. So we were dropping once a week. So just stay on board, and we're going to take care of your Pru Urvu for you. Children have to take care of your notes, but we got you on the Torah instead.
You know what's so wild about that? You're going to love this. It's Hashkacha just today. You know who Rick Rubin is, right?
Yes.
It's like, people don't know. He's like arguably the greatest music producer living, maybe ever.
Just for having good taste, right? That's his whole thing. He doesn't even play any instruments.
He came out with a book in 2023. It's called The Creative Act, I think, The Art of Being, something like that. And anybody knows, if you ever watch how he listens to music, I learned how to listen to music. I should be lucky. you play the music and he's like swimming in it. He's like sinks into the song, right? And he came out this book, and I just started it last night because I'm like, we're working on the podcast space, and like when you deal with artists and creativity, you want to learn from the greatest. And his first chapter, I just read it last night. Somebody said that it's all about how every human is a creator. God designed us to be naturally creative, and he says, don't view creativity as like, oh, I have to paint a Picasso. He says, whatever you're doing, you could be in any realm, in the industry. That's why he said the fact that Hashem made the first commandment of the whole Torah is to be creative. It's showing you to the depth of what it means to be a member of Homo sapiens. It means to be someone that's looking to like develop and produce and build. And
that's Tselem Elokim.
Yeah, a kid, like you said, there's nothing more creative than creating life. And that's where our first commandment of the Torah is to create life. Not like, oh, have kids. Let me have 11 kids so I could have more insurance coming from the government. Subsidies. Oh, it means we're supposed to view life as a creative act. And kids are like the highest manifestation of like, how can we like bring good to the world? And like I was once talking to... Yeah, exactly. I was once talking to a big rabbi. He told me something I'll never forget. He said people criticize a lot of the religious families because there's so many kids. And they mock them, like, oh, they want like more like government subsidies and like. He's like, do you have
Shemaim subsidies?
Yeah,
more chances at all.
He goes, do you have any idea how much work it is to have children? You think we just like have kids and we just like vibe? Do you know what a house with a lot of kids is like? It's work, but I think you're like what we're seeing from my Mo is that if we view Pru Urvu, it's not like, oh, you have to do the checklist to like have like kids. It's like the highest form of you have to be creative.
Right.
That's beautiful.
And he brings that to Torah. That's the second highest form.
What? Right. But it's the same underpinning, meaning Torah, kid, building. I think people go a lot. I think today, like we were talking about before about the modern school system. I know I didn't like. Thank God I was a good student. I just think we feel very stifled. I think it's a naturally like, or saying like, yeah, it was built as a system to produce good industrial workers. It wasn't built to mold and develop human potential. And like, it's a factory system. How can we get employees, get on the conveyor belt so you can work at a conveyor belt? And we're saying, no, that's not what a human is supposed to be.
So the Gemara style learning is more creative.
Like we're saying, like what we're doing right now. We're doing right now. We're fulfilling the mitzvah. We're living Torah. Like if Debbie has a thought and then Or has a thought that makes me think of something and then you think of something, that's what Torah's not like. I want you to memorize these 2 prakim by tomorrow, and if you don't, you're gonna fail. Hashem's like, what are you even doing? That's not Torah. What are you even doing? People talking about light, like this in Aish, like these Rebbein that I'm close, like Rav Moshe Chaimid, who Or said he knows. Like he was. This is how the whole idea started. Like about a month ago, he was giving a series of shirim on the Yud Gimel Yikam of the Rambam, and I never thought about this before. He was talking about what did Avram Avinu do in his tent? Like what was he doing? He was talking to people about life. Oh, how's your shalom bayis? How's your wife? How's your crops? How's your business? How your kids? Oh, what religion do you? Oh, why are you pagan? Let's talk about that for a second. Like, there's a God. He loves you. Like, I think, like you're saying, this type of thing is Pru Urvu in the sense of I think we have to view our days as how can we be creative versus how can I like check the box to like, make money.
So to bring that point further, he expounds on this. You're gonna like this.
There you go.
He says that this is especially true on Shabbat, because on Shabbos every Jew gets an additional soul that arrives through the merit of Shabbos.
Yeah.
And then when Shabbat is over, that soul goes back to heaven. You don't get that soul the whole week. It goes back to heaven. And when it goes back each week, God asks the soul, "What new insight did you learn while you were in the physical world?" So you get a soul for a day, and it gets grilled on its way back in. And if the person made an effort to gain a new insight on Shabbos, then the soul repeats it to Hashem, and Hashem announces, I have an insight from this soul, and this brings great joy to the entire heavens, and everyone brings them all together. Listen to this new idea that the soul has brought in. And then the angels come before this soul and allow it to enjoy the radiance of their wings. So, but if the soul remains silent, then that's pretty embarrassing. So you have your Shabbos soul that you see once a week. Don't send it back for a bad time in heaven. It can be embarrassed.
I think there has to be growth. There has to be growth.
So, but specifically on Shabbos, you get that double. You get that double soul. It's saying take advantage. You have double of the priority to make an insight right now.
Wow.
Right? And don't embarrass that soul on its way back to Shemayim, because it can throw down in Shemayim when it comes back with a new insight. Everyone's stopping to listen to it. So I thought that was an amazing idea. That's just building on what you're saying. You see, during the week, you don't have time to create. I know it's a time of creation. Shabbos is rest, but is it though? It's rest from creation in this world, but it's not rest from creation in the spiritual world. You're now actually more commanded to create Torah, not less.
Wow.
So Shabbos is not the rest of creation. It's creation in this world so you can create in the other world, which is extremely, extremely powerful. And we know that even with something like the traditional idea of Pru Urvu, it is a mitzvah of Oneg Shabbos to be intimate on Shabbos and create a child on a Friday night.
Like the highest
so
level.
You see, creation doesn't take a break on Shabbos. It doubles down for the important things. When you have more time because you're done creating less important things throughout the week. The 6 days are creation, but it's distractions. The 7th day is true creation. It's not rest, which is like Shabbos flipped on its head.
But it's also interesting. I was looking at the pasuk, like Hashem said, "Pru Urvu mulus haaretz v'kivshua." So he's telling them, I want you to be fruitful and multiply, and fill the land, fill earth, fill the map, fill the global map. I want you to conquer it. It's like creation feels very like hippie-ish. Create everything, like paint art, like sing songs, go to Woodstock, and kivshua, like conquer it, feels very like warmongering. But there is that sense. I think when Hashem created Homo sapiens, He created humans. There's this sense of like we're supposed to conquer the world in a sense. Like we're supposed to build cities and to build businesses and build hospitals and schools, and like it doesn't have to be like a Genghis Khan style. It could be that like we want to build big things in our life. Like Hashem, like let's say we're talking about you. Like it could be creative to like revitalize the whole educational system, or it could be. But seriously, that's not being like a warlord. That's being dreaming big. Kivshua, I don't think Hashem wants us staying by ourselves in the corner, not doing anything with our lives. I think He wants us to go out there and to make moves and to Steve Jobs famous leave a dent in the universe. He wants us to make moves, and not. I think people, especially in Gullus, I think we got very small. Our mindsets got very small. Like look how
distracted by all everything that's out there.
Yeah, do that.
Trauma. Yeah.
Right, when you're busy just trying to survive. You're It is amazing though how much Torah was created in Gullus, right?
That's true.
Judaism really did expand throughout that time, even though we were under so much pressure and pain.
Which is a miracle in its own right.
That is a miracle, because typically when you're just trying to survive, you're not thriving.
Like the Rambam wrote his books being chased by these warmongering tribes.
If you tell me I need to write like a sefer like the Rambam, I was a camp.
I can't even learn on the plane.
And I need to be in a resort, and everything's taken care of for 10 years. Exactly. And this guy's in a war zone.
It's incredible.
For 3 different countries. So that shows you that maybe it's not the case. Maybe it's not true that if you have everything built for you, that's when you'll maybe you actually need to be challenged. You need to work on your survival, and that, this is like an American conversation. It's like if you're too coddled, right?
Right.
Then maybe you don't actually accomplish as much. Maybe we do need to be, coal makes diamonds, right? Is that the phrase?
Pressure turns coal into diamond.
Yeah, pressure turns coal into diamond.
Yeah, go ahead, Debbie.
No, it just reminds me of last week's Parsha Vayeshev, right? Which is the commentary of Yaakov wants to settle, but then he's thrown into this whole Yosef saga. And a lot of the commentaries say that Yaakov needs, that settling is not for this world.
Right.
That he needed.
Right,
exactly. That he needs that.
Because he's a tzaddik and he has to have a hard life.
And he has to accomplish if he's settling.
No, but I like that Debbie's point saying the nature of life is there's gotta be something we're trying to do. It's not like I know the Lubavitcher Rebbe, he was very anti the American concept of retirement. So what does it even mean? Just die. He's like, what happened after Moshe Rabbeinu retires?
People do die.
He died. It's very unhealthy.
People die when they retire.
It's very unhealthy. A human is not supposed to wake up and feel like there is nothing going on in my life. Shuffleboard, yes. That's not healthy. I like that. That's a great point, because it's like Hashem doesn't mean suffering. It doesn't have to be suffering. Mm-hmm. But I think what you're saying is that it needs to be the growth. Like development, constant growth.
Constant growth.
Look
at Yosef, right? Yosef at the beginning of his life, he's coddled, not coddled, but like he's the favorite, Yaakov, and the brothers don't see him as that he could even have the potential of being a king. That's why they're like, what do you mean these dreams? And then look at, he's thrown into this crazy situation, and that's where he thrives. That's where he becomes literally Yosef Hatzadik, right? So it's like, I don't know. I think that's, we see many examples throughout the Torah and Tanakh that is very much true.
Speaking of a hard life, if you're sold by your family at 17 years old and then you're in prison until you're 30, like your 20s are gone, forget the parties. You're like I mean, people always look at the end of the story in Tanakh. I feel like you look at Yosef Hatzadik, David HaMelech, Yaakov, and you don't really pay attention to actually how hard their lives are. And you're right, that is where they're made. I mean, to be in prison from 17 to 30 is insane. That should drop most of us. And he rises out of that, and you're right, that's when he
That's an extended corona. We complained about 2 years.
So the bottom line is we're walking away from this podcast with the creation of humans going, we're so soft.
You know what's amazing? Like, hit me deeply what Debbie was saying, because I was talking to one of my good friends last night. We're on my porch just chilling, or 2 nights ago, whatever. And we were talking about, like, Yosef is just, like, in jail, and, like, it ends, and you're like it should be illegal that Vayishev and Miketz are not a double parsha. Like, you just end, like, and no way, he's just, like, not even vibing. He's just, like, shucks, and, like, he forgot about him. But then Miketz
For 2 years.
Yeah, for years, not like a week, for years. He's like languishing.
Not in a week, but this is real life.
Language
is years.
He's like languishing for years, and then Miketz said, okay, fine, but then he's like in jail, and like he went through this whole like transformative process. But then this week's parsha, it's Paro hears about Yosef and like Vayiritzum, and they like rushed him out, and like boom, and then we were talking about my friend how like they shave him, he shaves, changed his clothes. And then he's standing in front of Paro, and all of a sudden, and like that's how way sometimes Hashem makes it where like there's a chapter in our life where like the coal mining chapter, and we don't even realize that there's a diamond being formed. Like if you would tell Yosef at age 17, by age 30 you're going to be the most powerful man in the world, you're like, okay, very nice.
Now he seems like he would have been
Maybe
but he would have thought that he was just going to be plucked out.
That's the point.
Not going down.
He thought he was going to. Like, I'm going to be anointed. He's going to walk outside of his house, and a crown's going to be placed in his head.
And I think that's naturally what we
natural. We don't feel the diamond crown being built on our heads until all of a sudden you wake up, and all of a sudden he's standing in front of Paro, and he's like, and then if you would have looked at Yosef walk into the palace in Mitzrayim, you would have known that this guy was just languishing in jail for years. You just see a very good-looking Jewish young guy, clean-shaven, fresh, Versace suit, and he's standing in front of Paro. You don't know that he was just in jail.
But there's another catch. The other catch is that had he gone straight from who he was,
it wouldn't have been him.
It wouldn't have been successful.
It wouldn't have been, never.
Right? You need the Mitzrayim in order to get the Torah.
But now connecting back to here, that's what hit me, is that when Hashem created Homo, so he created this species, like, and I've heard you talk about it, it's like half angel, half animal, and he created this interesting thing, and he says the nature of your life is to like try to like develop yourself. Like Pru Urvu is not just like a redu. Our whole thing is that we're supposed to be developing and building. Some people, it means literally conquering countries. Some people it does. There's good people in history that fought wars. David HaMelech was a king and a general. He was fighting wars, right? Some people, it just means like opening up a soup kitchen. But we have projects. That's what it's project. I think we have to be in development. Pru Urvu, kivshua, or do means we have to be in development, and we are always in development. And like I said, Yosef, he taught us that jail, we all have that jail period. Because what are we trying to do? And like, I think the question is, what do we want to get out of jail for? And that's what I think Hashem is saying. We have to be feeling like, I want to build this. I want to do this. I want to do this. I think that's how we need to view our life. That's what it means to be human. I think that's what the pasuk is saying.
Rashi actually adds something interesting here, but
But
before that, I just an opinion. I thought that, and I think this also has to do with the idea of galut, where it's gotten even worse, where we need to. This is kind of like, so the difference between pre-Mashiach and Mashiach times is that during Mashiach times, we're not going to focus on getting rid of our problems. Now we're focusing, today we all say, let me solve this weakness. Even if you mean well, right? It's like, even if Yosef, let's say, had faith and meant well, he said, okay, I have to go through this to become the better. But that's now. And then essentially I'm looking at is now the exile, the galut, the 2,000-year galut, is specifically to set us up for Moshiach. But the idea is that after Moshiach, we won't need to hit rock bottom to elevate. Instead of trying to get rid of our weaknesses, essentially now we're just getting less weak, right? We're becoming less bad. And after the times of Moshiach, it's just we're going to be all about growth. Society is just going to be all about growth. It doesn't mean that we're going to be perfect. We're just going to be thinking all the time, how do I become better without needing to go through a tragedy?
Wow.
Yeah.
But that level, what you just said, is that, like, it's hitting me deeply because if you study Jewish history, we've had some points of, like, there's been some golden eras. Like,
we wax and we wane. Just
yeah,
like the moon, right?
For sure. But historically, Gullus was always, it was a hustle. There was always that hustle element. And like now,
we're still in Gullus.
We are.
We're talking about like past tense because
we are, but we know we're in the middle. We're in the middle of the process.
Yeah.
But like I know like Rav, he has this famous talks about like what Olam Haba is. So we're not talking about like Olam Haba, no physical reality, but Chazal do talk a lot about Yemos Mashiach. Like the Rambam famously, he says we're going to have the infrastructure of regional stability and security and the strong armies and wealth, not because we care about that. Everyone wants to be able to pay their bills, but for what Or's saying is that we all want to be in the sense of, like, say, pure self-development. Mashiach is when you get to wake up and, like, think of the greatest rebbeim you know in the world. And you get to wake up, they have buttery, amazing food and drink served, like a shefa. You get to just listen to the best shirim and the best, like, music concerts from, like, that's what the Beis HaMikdash was, and Mitzvah Hashem is going to be soon. It's like a music festival for Hashem. Like when I went to Uman once.
But we don't wax and wane this time. That's
exactly.
The moon stays full.
Everyone gets to just be in this amazing like state of like I was saying, like in Uman, it was the first time I felt it. Like I don't connect so much to like being at Rav Nachman's kever, but being like a 70,000 Jews going to just vibe and Hashem, like that's a special like hakel. Like you walk into the Beis HaMikdash and you have like, Shlomo Katz, Eitan Katz, Yonatan Razel, Yishai Ribo, Omer Adam, Naftali Kempa, and like the most beautiful, like all like this like
you're saying the next simplest base of Shweva in the base.
But for real, and it's just Torah, but like not like Torah, like quoting footnotes. Torah, like saying like Torah, like what is life all about? What's the meaning of life? Like that's why all the nations are going to be streaming through Shalim, because all of humanity knows that we were created for something, but we got lost over the past 5,000-6,000 years. And like this pasuk is everything. We all know we're supposed to be developing and building, but like for what? Like what are we trying to do here? Like what is this reality we're in? Like people get lost. People get lost in the money chase. People get lost in Instagram. People get lost in, I don't know, fame. And like end of the day, like that's I think the question that the Torah is trying to answer. What is a human being supposed to be trying to do in this reality?
I think it was. We talked about this last week.
Yeah.
Angels are 100% spiritual.
Right.
Animals are 100% physical.
Yeah.
We're like that. I like to think of us as like Hashem's free will congressmen, and we're supposed to connect between the lower and the upper. Because if then it's just separate. It's just if you don't have men.
We're trying to show the bridge, like be the bridge.
Exactly. There has to be. I think maybe. There's not supposed to be day 2, right? Maybe we're still in day 2 right now of creation. We're just 2 separate firmaments.
We have to be the bridge. Oh, Jeff, what do you see with all these kids in high school nowadays? Like you see these kids every day. What is the average? But seriously, what is the average from kid? Like what are they dealing with nowadays? Like what's the overarching struggle of the generation today?
That is a great question that I would have to put more thought into before I would say it on a podcast.
Yeah?
I think
because whatever I say could be taken out of context. And Baruch Hashem, I have amazing students.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are doing well. Of course, a lot of what their struggles are, I'm not privy to know. That's the reality.
Because somebody told me recently, they think from like high level people, he said they think it's depression. They think that everyone's always dealing with it, but like the same way
it's being numb.
Yeah, but they say that Rav Nachman, like they say like Eish Tukar until Moshiach, because Rav Nachman dealt so much with depression and hopelessness and Yush and giving up hope and all these things. So that's why he's the one that's like catching like wildfire. And like I think there's something in the culture, Jewish, non-Jewish, everywhere, that I think people feel a certain maybe it's the Hollywood.
I think it's it's overstimulated with dopamine. I think nowadays
our brains are fried.
Yeah. One of my ninth graders today said like 6 words to me in a row that I didn't know what it meant.
Yeah.
One of them was Riz. I knew that one.
Yeah.
But they said like brain fog or something, some term
and the social media scrolling and stuff.
Yeah, when you over scroll on social media and your brain gets fried and like to a point of legitimate pain. And there's a term for it now that they said, I can't remember. I don't think Rafi listens to this podcast, but Rafi, if you remember, there's no way he does it. I'll be very surprised if he tells me he does. But he's the one who said it to me today.
But there are teams of people, teams of high multimillionaires in Silicon Valley.
Brain rot.
That's their job is to get us to scroll. The same way all of advertising, it's based on a fundamental principle. How do we get these consumers to spend more, right? So all of social media, they have one, how do we get us to click? So it's almost like this, people talk about the Yitzhahara, the Sitra Achra. There's real people in Silicon Valley and all these tech companies. How do we get eyeballs? And they make money. It's these little kids on their phones are like scrolling. Like they should be doing what the pasuk is saying. They should be kids back in the day used to be outside exploring, playing in the forest, building tree houses, playing sports. Instead, kids are by themselves in their room. Dark lights are off, scrolling. Best case scenario, Fortnite. Worst case scenario, not for now. And I'm saying it's not how a human being is supposed. You're supposed to be developing and like learning things and like.
I think the biggest issue nowadays is being numb, and I don't think that applies to teenagers. I think that applies to
everyone.
Also,
everyone. You think it's tech based? You think it's social media, internet based?
I think a lot of people are numb nowadays because you get pounded with so much dopamine from so many different situations
and you're not feeling the Pru Urvu. You're like you don't even feel that like explore vibe.
Well, this is the whole thing. This is what Rabbi Foreman talks about with Adam and Chava, which is that the whole situation with Adam and Chava is the power of creativity. And that really, taiva comes from the desire to create, but you're perverting creation. You're perverting the idea of how you're going to create. And that ultimately can kill your tools of creation. It's
like a misuse of your natural instincts.
Then you go numb.
Wow.
Whatever.
That's wild. Yeah. Well, I have a question with Debbie. So I know I heard before you said you're in the medical field. So like most people like I met a nurse recently, and she's a oncologist, and she specializes in blood cancer. And she says a lot of people are terminal that she ends up seeing. And I remember thinking like, wow, you actually spend your days talking to people that know they're dying. Like, what is that like? And if you're in the medical field, like, do you deal with people that are like how serious are the cases you're dealing with?
No, thank God I do less serious than that. I do ear, nose, and throat.
Okay, but the people that come to you are sick. They're not able to, the ailments they have, they're not able to live normally, right? So I always, when you deal with sick people, they want to be healthy, right? But what do you think deep down, what do people want to do with their health? What are most people looking to do? I want to get better too. What?
Interesting.
I think it's kind of the same thing. I don't think they think that far. I think they think I want to be less weak. I want to suffer less.
Let's say someone's not suffering though. Let's say someone's at a place that their bills are paid and they're healthy and whatever. What do you, like this pasuk like Josh chose? I think it's what should people be doing?
People, if they do have everything, this is where depression comes in. If they're not creating,
lack
of
purpose.
There we go. Because humans are created to create.
This is where you see like athletes. Right? We don't have to make this a Torah conversation. You see athletes. Okay, besides the fact that some of them are depressed even during their career, but you'll hear a lot of them talk about that they live with the sense of purpose. Their goal is to create a championship, create whatever it is, conquer, and then when you retire at 35 years old.
Now what?
Now they have all the money in the world. You think they have everything they're supposed to need to be happy, but all of a sudden
Gilbert Arenas
depressed.
He went on that
because there's no desire to create anymore. And I think ultimately what makes a person happy is creation,
development, growth.
Yeah, that's ultimately what makes. But here's the catch. The catch is it needs to be, if you're in the gym and you have the ability to lift 25 pounds, you need to be lifting 26 pounds. And the problem is when life makes you lift 100 pounds, then your arm breaks and you can't do it anymore. And the other problem is when you're like, I'll do it when I feel good. Let me just lift 5 pounds today. Mm-hmm. And I believe back in the day, you had more issues with people being forced to lift 100 when they couldn't. And nowadays, probably it seems, especially in America, more people are lifting 5 pounds when they should be lifting 25. And that's where you get anxiety and depression and things like that. Because ultimately, you know, like if you, I procrastinate like crazy, right? Like my wife Tal is an expert in not procrastinating. I'm a procrastinator. You know how if like you have an assignment, you have something you need to do, and it's gonna take 30 minutes, but if you procrastinate for an hour, now you're not gonna do it now. Now you procrastinate for another hour, but if you did it right away, because you start feeling this lack of creation, and that eats at you. So I think I'm not a psychologist at all, but I think ultimately what you're getting at, I think, is when you're in the gym lifting 5 pounds when you know you could be lifting 25, and that's spiritually speaking we're talking about. I think that's where people run into when they're not happy. And just to build out on this point, I think this is something that's very important. This is something that's tell to my students all the time, which is when they do start working on Yiddishkeit and they work on their Judaism, it's very important to be able to lift 26 pounds if your ability is to lift 25. There's sometimes when people start lifting 100, and then if your arm breaks, you can't work out. That's spiritual. Your arm could break spiritually, and then you can't work out, and you need to recover. And now you can't be doing anything Jewish anymore. But it's also very important not to be doing the 5. And this is where the concept comes. You need to have a Rebbe. A Rebbe is just your spiritual personal trainer.
You need a coach.
You need a coach. Nobody can pull out of themselves.
No human. It's impossible.
Nobody. No matter how determined you are.
Michael Jordan had Phil Jackson. You could be the biggest athlete in the world. You need it.
Exactly. So every person needs that, spiritually speaking, as well.
You know what's so crazy what you're saying? Like it's wild, because if we keep going back to the pasuk, but this is the fundamental. This is like the mission statement of humanity. And instead of telling them, he's like charging us. He says, Pru Urvu means get married and have kids. The Meluas Aretz means like expand, like, right? Vikivshua means develop, means business.
Kivshua means
conquer. Which means a person, the peak state for a human, if we're not happy, we align with how Hashem designed us, have kids, and have a business or have something. And it sounds like you're saying if we're aligned with that, like if an NBA player finds a nice girl, has kids, and he's in the league, whether he wins the championship or not, but he's moving forward, he's developing, he's trying, you shouldn't be depressed that way, right? You shouldn't be, unless there's an emotional chemical issue, right? But
if you're in the sweet spot of lifting 26 pounds,
right? If you're in that group,
I think that's the ultimate.
The average person who has a career, has a spouse, a family, you should feel like you're living a good life. I think people's issues start like whether any of those wedges, like if they, let's say I thought when you were talking, the image is like a guy. He finds a great girl. They live in a nice apartment house, whatever, with a few kids. He has a good business, and like he's maybe doing nice things in the community, and he's happy. He's like a happy, satisfied guy. I was thinking the opposite, like a guy who like he's fat. He's not doing anything productive. He's sitting in his mother's basement. Like that guy's miserable. Yeah, you're not living with how a human is supposed to live. So I think that's where the problems are. If somebody doesn't take care of himself physically, he's not engaging in relationships, he's not trying to have kids, not trying to build, you're not living how a human's supposed to live. Of course you feel terrible, you know? You know what's so crazy also hit me, like these discussions, like we're looking at like the Torah is so old. It's so old. And like Jordan Peterson is arguably the most prominent psychologist in the world. He just his latest book, you know what his latest book is called? It's called We Who Wrestle with God. That means Yisrael. The most prominent, smartest, most educated people in the world now are writing about the Torah. He's like all this stuff. And like, I think humanity's collectively being like, yeah, we went off the D, like we went off the derech for a little bit, but like we need like these discussions. Like we need to understand why we're here. Like, what are we trying to do here? What are we trying? Like any older generation.
That's the title of this week's podcast. Why are we here?
Yeah, why? But literally, because that pasuk Chavches is the mission statement of what we're supposed to do: develop, grow, build, create. That's what we're here for.
So I'm gonna obviously cut out like probably the last half hour we did and make it a Hanukkah. What's it called? So it's gonna be an editing nightmare to add this point in the end. But I want to wrap it up, moving on into a more subdued conversation. We went like having all sorts of philosophical conversations, but I mentioned that we skipped a lot of halachot. Like the Mamla saw this opportunity when mankind is created to say how you're supposed to live, right? And he went into the halachas of marriage and things like that. So here in Tanach Tea, somehow we always end up covering only one pasuk. I had thought we were going to cover 3 today, and we didn't even make it towards the end of one, so I'm determined to finish this one pasuk at least. So there's a couple more halachas that he goes through that I just want to throw out, just because I want our listeners to come away with halachas that I thought they might not know, and I didn't know some of these, and it could be helpful. So once he starts talking about mankind, the mamloes, and he talks about marriage, and he talks about the Torah thing that we said, he then goes into literally the day. He goes into washing, tzitzit, brachot, and he goes into like, day to day, how to be a person. So we're gonna skip a lot of what he says, but one thing I wanted to point out, a couple different halachot on the topic of washing. He says that there are 15 times when you need to wash your hands in order to get rid of bad spirits. Now, if you're like me, you're probably like 15. Like I wash my hands for like bread, and when I wake up now, when you wash your hands for bread, that's not for bad spirits. But when you wake up in the morning, that is to get rid of bad spirits. You're supposed to wash your hands before davening every single time, but only after the morning you make a bracha, because that's when you get rid of the bad spirits. So here are the other times, this is Kabbalah, but here are the other times when there are bad spirits and you should wash. So when you wake up, as we already discussed, when you leave the bathroom, okay? When you leave the bathroom, even if you didn't use it, he says. You just walk into the bathroom, he says you should wash your hands. Bathhouse, yeah. After cutting one's fingernails, after taking off one's shoes with your hands, after touching your feet. He says after scratching your head. You ever see people scratch their head with their kippah? That's why they do that. Seems that maybe the minhag nowadays is people scratch their head and they don't wash their hands after. That's like a very high level. After going to the cemetery, I think that one everyone knows. After touching the dead. After examining your clothing for lice, even if you don't find anything. Something specific about lice. After sexual intercourse. After touching a insect. After scratching one's body. Again, that's another one that's, okay, high level. After bloodletting, that's like a medieval thing. We don't have to worry about that. And then lastly, after a haircut. After a haircut, which I did not know. And I was speaking to another rabbi in school today. I asked him if he heard this, Rabbi Nachbar. And he said in Israel, when he would go to his barber, they had a washing station after he got a haircut. Nice. In Israel. So that is a real thing. So I just thought that would be worthwhile for people to know. Another topic that I think would be worthwhile for people to know, and this might actually be related to the philosophical discussions that we had. He starts talking about tzitzit and the importance of wearing it. And he tells this story from the Talmud. And it tells of a Jew who was especially careful to keep the commandment of tzitzit. And this protected, and we're told that tzitzit protects you from sin. And the story of the Talmud actually is an actual story of it protecting a person from sin. So it says that this man who was very careful with tzitzit, he heard about a prostitute who lived on a distant island who costed 400 golden coins. So he's like, wow, this is, big stuff. So when he heard this, his passion burned within him, and he decided to make a journey, which if you compare this nowadays, it's a real commitment to, like, nowadays people have this journey in their pocket. Back then it was a real commitment to give in on a person's passions. And he sent her the 400 gold coins in advance with the message announcing that he's going to arrive. And when this time came and he gets to the harlot's door, it's announced by her servants, and he walks in, and there's 7 beds. And she's on the 7th bed, and each bed has silver and gold, and there's ladders from bed to bed. And she gets undressed, and she goes into the top bed. So it's I guess, another form of seduction to really just keep on, hyping it up. So he starts climbing. He undresses, but when he goes to undress, his tzitzis slaps him across the face. That's what it says. And at that moment, he sat down on the ground, and he walks away. So she, of course, is like insulted. She's like nobody ever walks away from her, right? So she runs after him, and she says, you need to tell me what's going on. Like, what is happening right now? So he says, listen, I've never seen a woman as beautiful as you. Like, don't take it as an insult. But you have to realize that our God has given us a commandment known as tzitzit. And in this commandment, it says, I am God, your Lord, 2 times. The first is to indicate that he's faithful to reward those who keep his commandments. And the second is to indicate that he will punish those who violate them. So when I undressed and I got slapped in the face by my tzitzit, that appeared to me as like the tzitzit, one slap was the one telling me you're not getting the reward, and the other slap was like, and you're going to get punished for this. and that's why I ran away from you. And she said, I will not let you leave until you write down your name, where you come from, and who your master is, like who's your teacher. So she learned that he's a Jew from Eretz Yisrael, a disciple of Rabbi Chia. And as soon as he left, she divided all of her possessions into 3 equal portions. One portion she gave to her king of her land, so she can get permission to leave. The second portion she gave to the poor. And the third was to help her get to Israel. And when she gets to Israel, she wants to meet with Rabbi Chia. And she tells him, I want to convert to Judaism. And he says, well, why? Could it be that one of my students caught your eye? I don't know why that was his first thought, but that's what his first thought was. And she showed him the note, and she told him the whole story, and especially about the Tziztit portion. And she said, I saw the power of just one commandment. How much more must be the power of all of them? I want to become a Jew. And hearing this, Rabbi Chia understood that her motives were pure, and he said, you take what you have earned, and he gave her permission to marry the disciple. And the Talmud says that they got married. And the 7 beds, which had not been used for sin, were now used for, a mitzvah. And he says that the reward for Tziztit is even greater than this. But this is an unbelievable example of first of all, we spoke about early in the episode how open they were to converts.
That's love, yeah, like not just converts, bro.
Yeah, think about this convert, but he is like, come on board. Like unbelievable.
It shows you.
But also, when you don't give in, I spoke about this in the David and Avigail, bringing it full circle to David and Avigail. I spoke about it in the episode of David and Avigail, that Avigail told David that if you don't give in to your passions when it's not allowed, Hashem will give it to you when it's allowed. So bringing that into our Hanukkah discussion, this just hit me now. It's not that these things are not allowed, but you have to make it kosher. Use it when it's allowed. Use it as a means to an end. It's not that sex in this story is not allowed. It's that when you're worshiping for sex itself, that's the Greeks of the Hanukkah story.
Nice.
But when it's a means to an end, to create children or Pru Urvu, whatever it is, and it's within the context of a marriage, now it becomes the biggest mitzvah. So on Hanukkah, maybe it's about taking the darkness and turning it into light. The darkness is a means to an end. So yeah, I guess that would be a good place to stop.
That's
or
awesome.
We could go for another 2 hours. So thank you so much, Elan, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Really appreciate it. We will finish day 6 next time. We're trying to work our way slowly but surely. We're going to get to Shabbos.